Welcome to the June 2024 CPO 1 meeting. And we are grateful for the land we are on, Kalapuyan land. Signers of the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 were removed from their homelands to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Today, their descendants are tribal members of Grand Ronde and Siletz tribe, carrying on the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. We acknowledge the people on whose land we live, the Atfaladi Kalapuyans, also known as the Tualatin Band of Kalapuyans, the first inhabitants of Washington County. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place, and we recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our community. I'd like to invite all of us to reflect on the role government has played in the painful colonial history, and reflect as well on the resilience and healing of the Indigenous land and communities. We invite everyone to collaborate and work together with the tribe to take care of the land and water and the people who inhabit these spaces. We have a good program tonight. We're going to learn about middle housing, which is a new form of, I'm not sure, Anne will tell us the details. I'm not sure if you'd call it zoning or a new type of zoning or exactly what. But Anne Kelly with Land Use and Transportation will give us a presentation. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you all very much for having me here tonight. I will share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Nope, we see you.
Oh, let's see. I need to hit one more button.
There we go.
Okay.
Looks good.
Great, thank you. So again, I really appreciate you having me here tonight to talk about middle housing. I was here a couple of years ago to speak with CPO 1 when we were just developing middle housing ordinances and we hadn't yet adopted the standards. So it's nice to be back. I'm trying to get my screen to move. There we go. So what is middle housing? Under Oregon law, it's defined as duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, and townhouses. And in 2019, the state passed a bill, House Bill 2001, that required local jurisdictions throughout the state to allow this type of housing, these 5 types, in all residential districts where we allow single detached housing, or what many people know as single family homes, at least in the urban areas. So of the 5 types, Washington County had already been allowing 4 of them. And the 5th type we had already allowed in North Bethany for quite some time. So really what the bill meant for Washington County was that we have to allow these housing types in more places, more widely, greater numbers, and we have to allow them through a much simpler process than we used to. So the process has to be no more stringent than that for one single family home or a single detached house, which means we are processing these usually through type 1 reviews. The state intended not just to increase affordable housing, or what we all think of as affordable housing, but to increase the supply and variety of housing at all price points, all affordability brackets. So the reason for that is because at times like this, when the housing supply is very, very low and the choices of different housing types are very minimal, there's so much competition for all of the housing that's out there, and the people with the most money will outbid those who might have less or even, very little. Even for those homes that we would normally think of as, affordable housing, the most affordable housing. I think everybody's aware that real estate has been going through this process where the highest bidder is going well beyond asking price for quite some time now. So the more supply and variety that we have, even for those households that can pay more, the more that home seekers with less money to spend can better compete for housing in the typically low and moderate brackets. And I'll talk a little bit about plexes. That would be duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. Most of us know these as attached unit products, but in our code, we also allow these as detached units. So you might see middle housing proposed as a triplex, for example, and it could be 3 individual units that are not attached, and they might be on one shared lot, or they could come in later and do a land division and put them on individual lots. But typically they'd be smaller than a normal single family home. So it's kind of a way to get to small lot detached housing, and by virtue of being smaller, this is kind of an inroad for people who are looking for starter homes and downsizing and so forth. We go a little bit beyond state law in terms of being more generous, I think, with this housing form, because we apply a housing cap like we're allowed to do under the law, but we don't count existing single detached housing or up to 2 accessory dwelling units toward the cap on plex units. So like on this site that I'm showing here to the left, this had at the bottom here an existing single family home, and then they proposed a detached duplex on the same property, and we don't require them to count that existing house toward the maximum. So they actually get a little bit more than what they normally could. Townhouses, I think more of us are familiar with these. They're always an attached product, and they're always on a separate individual lot. So they're what's known as a single family product because they have their own lot. We do require a minimum average lot size of 1,500 square feet for these, and in most districts, they can be 25 units per acre. We aren't really seeing anything at that level yet, but it's possible, let's say. And cottage clusters, the last type that I'll talk about, we're seeing a lot of interest in these. These are always a detached unit product. Their size is regulated. Their maximum height is 10 feet lower than what a single family house could be. There's a maximum average floor area. So between all the units on the site, they can't average more than 1,400 square feet. And the footprint of every unit is limited to 900 square feet, though they can exclude 200 square feet of an attached garage if they have one. So this is another project that's been approved that I'm showing here over near 90th and Hall. And it's a very small project. but we do have one coming. As for public improvements, when middle housing is all on one shared lot, not divided, we are only requiring right-of-way for future improvements. And this is because we can't really require anything more than what we ask for one single detached house. So we can't pile a lot of requirements on for a single detached house, therefore we can't do it for middle housing. But when middle housing is divided through a middle housing land division, then we can require frontage improvements. So we're getting county standard streets and sidewalks along the frontages of middle housing land divisions. We can't require through streets though, internal streets, but if they do propose them, we can also get those provided to county standard. So that's just kind of a basic run through on what's currently allowable and some of the requirements for middle housing. And I thought maybe we could go into questions if you'd like.
I have some questions. I'll ask one of mine first, and then
Okay.
people can figure out. So I'm still a little confused. If you have a lot in an R6 zone, for example, what's the maximum number of units on that? Any number of units that can fit?
It really depends. I'm going to go back a few slides. So it's funny the way that the middle housing model code developed by the state and some of the rules that go along with them were written. There are very specific requirements that are distinct for each middle housing type. And that includes the way you determine the maximum number. So I'm going to back up here. So for a duplex, these are allowed on any lot where we would allow a single detached home. There is not a minimum lot size. If you could allow a single family house there, you can allow a duplex there. When there's a triplex proposed, the maximum, either a triplex or a quadplex, the state says the maximum is 4 units for either of those, which is kind of funny. But they do also have a minimum parent lot size. So for a triplex, you'd need at least 5,000 square feet. And for a quadplex, you'd need at least 7,000 square feet. But when it comes to townhouse,
the lot itself has to be 7,000 feet to allow for 4 units.
To allow for the quadplex, yeah. And
okay.
So it doesn't, even if you had a 14,000 square foot lot, you're capped at 4 units, 4 plex units. So the plexes are capped at a number of units. And when you get into townhouses, those then become capped at a maximum density. So different measurement. And then cottage clusters, another completely different maximum. These are capped at 12 units per courtyard. So you have to have an additional courtyard when you're proposing more than 12. And if you were proposing more than 24, you'd have to have an additional courtyard. So it's funny in Virginia, but each of the housing types has a unique yardstick for what the maximum is.
And that gets me to one of my other questions, which is, are the courtyards generally shared space that are maintained by the property owner or by an HOA or whatever they figure out?
It doesn't, they're not required to divide the property, but if they did divide the property, they'd have to provide for easements to allow sharing between the properties in terms of the common space. And if it were cottages all on one lot, then we wouldn't necessarily see easements within there, but they would have shared rights to the common areas probably through an HOA.
Okay. Who else has questions? I don't see any hands. Come on, folks. Well, I've got one more.
Okay, go for it.
Questions is my business. What does affordability play into this at all? I was under the impression at the beginning of the discussion that part of the point was to make houses more affordable, and you explained that it's sort of that trickle down theory.
Sorry. Yeah,
because I think the places that are going to be going into Cedar Mill and Bethany are not going to be particularly affordable.
right. And yeah, certainly a regulated affordable housing provider could do a development in the form of middle housing, and there's interest in that. But these are meant to increase housing in all price brackets to free up what would be more historically affordable for other people. And at the same time, while a lot of these are expensive, at least in my opinion, a lot of these new middle housing units that come online do seem to be, kind of expensive. They are still less expensive than a single detached home of the same age and comparable size. So they're getting at affordability in a couple of different ways.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions. Come on, folks. Surely you have questions. Mary Lou, thank you. Okay, allow to talk. Talk, Mary Lou.
Well, I had to figure out how to unmute myself here.
Yep, you're
Okay.
on.
Okay, the question I have is I follow developments in unincorporated Washington County and generally show up at the neighborhood meetings looking for developers that are going to save trees. So one concern I have is there doesn't seem to be any room for trees. If you fill up the lot with buildings, what chance is there to plant some trees?
To plant some trees. We
Yeah.
are still requiring street trees for middle housing, and we've started out also as part of this requiring them for every single detached home that goes in.
Well, I wasn't thinking necessarily for street trees because I realized that those have historically been required. I'm thinking of trees on the property.
Yeah,
There doesn't seem to be any room.
well,
There's a tree in that picture.
On how dense the development is, and I mean, it depends on how large the units will be, what the developer's intent is, how much space they're taking up on the property. But this is separate from the requirements for significant natural resources that are currently being developed. Or you must be aware of that effort right now.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
I wasn't speaking about property that had significant natural resources on it. I was thinking of future development. And for middle housing, it appears as though there just won't be any room. I mean, unless there's room in a common area.
The setbacks for middle housing are the same as they are for a single detached home. So whatever could be accommodated for a single detached home should likely be, at least around the perimeter, something that could be accommodated for middle housing.
So far, I just haven't I just haven't seen any plans that include trees that you would consider, you know, growing to produce a canopy.
Yeah,
Mm.
we haven't received a whole lot of applications yet. We did adopt these standards in 2022, and it does take a while for developers to scale up when they're taking on a product that they're not familiar with, and it's taking a while for lenders to get used to this. So I can't say that I've seen a lot of plans come in, and we're still waiting to see them built.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
I'm honestly, I'm not sure that I've seen one with existing trees other than a cottage cluster proposal over at 150th and Pioneer.
theoretically, a cottage cluster could include smaller clustered housing and larger open space, right? Or are they required to, I mean, could they divide up the lot that way? Or are they required to just plaster dwellings as thickly as possible?
No, the housing sizes again are limited. There's small units or moderate sized units. Each courtyard would be a minimum 150 square feet.
That's the minimum. It could be larger.
150 square feet per unit, but as a common space.
Right. Which isn't much, 10 by 15. Yeah.
Well, per unit, and then when you get them together.
Right. And when you add them together as shared space, it might be possible to include space for a tree or two. And those would be amenities in terms of shade and habitat and just general attractiveness. Okay. Fran.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thank you very much, Anne, for coming to present to us.
Indeed.
Yes, again, we're Mary Lou and I are both on Tree Keepers, and we're very much concerned about tree canopy. And we believe that, in looking at what you're saying, presenting here, I see some minimum requirements for different aspects of it, but looking at it, we're very concerned. Two things. One is the Urban Heat Islands project demonstrated that trees do indeed provide shade and cooling, and people who are on the lower end of income really need the shade more than they need to drive up their air conditioning bill. So we really would like to see Washington County err on the side of protecting canopy for what it does for the person who's going to rent or buy these homes. And that have found our experience, and a lot of us on CCI have been around for 20, 40 years. And the behavior that we see is that it's pocket over planet. And we need to make sure that Washington County does do their best, make the best effort to ensure that whatever policy needs to be in place to protect these future residents, because they don't always understand up front what the impacts are. Yeah. And so just be aware that's our concern, and you'll hear more of this from us.
And yes, I don't disagree with you at all. Middle housing is not in a silo. There are the standards that I'm describing here that apply specifically to middle housing are not the only standards in the code that will also apply to residential development, including middle housing. So as the county develops more climate friendly standards, hopefully we'll see more of what you're talking about.
Just be aware that when I was on the rulemaking part of the climate and friendly housing, there are 1,100 pages of documentation there. There was one line item pertaining to trees. Now there are a lot more, because the sketches like you're showing here. So the people, I'm going to call it the flagship development of someone said, this is how it could look, has all these wonderful trees in it.
Mhm.
But all the documentation in the climate friendly and affordable housing has no trees, no setbacks for trees. So I was glad to hear you say that there will be setbacks in the affordable housing, this middle housing approach. Just be aware that, and if you need any help, we can help you with that criteria, because we're seeing that the setbacks are getting cut back smaller and smaller so that they won't accommodate a mature tree, which means that the county and the homeowner will be exposed to trees that will be upending infrastructure. So again, I'm going to turn it back over to Virginia, but just be aware that we're very concerned about that.
Okay, well, thank you. These are standards that, these were specific to middle housing under House Bill 2001 in 2019 and Senate Bill 458, which allowed their divisions. And those standards coming from the state level were very, very prescriptive. And much of what we could adopt as standards had to be no more stringent than what you would require for one single family house. So we didn't have a lot of discretionary opportunity to apply things beyond what was either in the bill, the associated rules, the model code that was developed through the rules, and alternatively what we might be requiring for a single detached house. So we don't have a lot of discretion to go beyond those things, and hopefully those are things that we can address with other mandates coming down from the state, and whatever we have, whatever ways we have to work that into the code overall.
Mary Lou, did you have another question, or did you just not put your hand down? Oh, I see a few more people with their hands up. Mary Lee. Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you for the reminder.
You're in.
What is the smallest size lot that middle housing can be applied to?
For a duplex, there is no minimum lot size. So
Yes,
it would be
but middle housing as in the 20 units per parcel.
for townhouses, okay. Those are allowed at 25 units per acre. But you need an average minimum lot size of 1,500, and you would need at least 2 units to make it townhouses. So 3,000 square feet would be the size you would need for 2 units.
But what about what you're calling middle housing when they're individual units, freestanding, no shared walls?
Those are middle housing as well. Middle housing is all of these things. So
on the ones where you're putting 20 individual units on a parcel, what's the smallest parcel that can accommodate that many units?
it's not 20 units per parcel, it's 20 units per acre. So there's 20 units per acre regulating this, but there's also a minimum average lot size per unit that requires 1,500 square feet. So you wouldn't have a townhouse development if you didn't have more than 1 unit. So you would need 2 at least. And they would each have to have 1,500 square feet of land beneath them. So the minimum would be 3,000 square feet to do 2 units. And beyond that, you would be measuring, you would be taking the acreage of the lot and multiplying it by 25 to get the maximum allowable units. So for example, let me pull up my calculator here.
So a 2-acre lot would have 50.
So the smallest, let's see, 5 times. So yeah, so it really depends on the number of units that they want to do. I mean, the smallest would be 3,000 for 2 units.
Complicated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Roger.
Hello?
Hello?
Yep, we
Yeah,
can hear
hi.
you.
Hello, Ann. Thank you for coming. I'm wondering about system development charges. Is that anything your department, do you have knowledge of those? Like with ADUs, was it half the price of a home? If you built an ADU, you'd pay a system development charge of half the cost of a home or something. So, yeah,
Those
how's
have
that working?
changed in November. We changed, if you're talking about the transportation development tax, for a detached ADU, accessory dwelling unit, we used to require the same transportation development tax as we do for any single detached house, and that's now changed. All middle housing units and ADUs are charged at a townhouse rate, which I don't recall off the top of my head, but it's less than that for a single detached home. And then system development charges do also apply, but most of those that the county collects are for other partners like the park district, the schools, Metro. So we only have 2 areas where we have some systems development charges that are the county's own systems development charges, and those are in North Bethany and Bonnie Slope West because of the need for new transportation facilities.
Hi,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
thank you. I am thinking, like, stepping back a little bit. Now that middle housing developments are being proposed, if you can talk a little bit about the kinds of developers that are jumping in and what kinds of questions and issues they have, and how are they as confused as everyone else, or have they studied it up and get it, and they're starting finally to jump in? Because I know right at first there weren't any middle housing proposals, but they're starting to become a little more common.
Yeah.
I know that was a lot of questions, but generally, who are the developers? Are they the same usual suspects, or are new types of developers coming in? And generally, what are their concerns and questions and confusions?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I think when the state was first developing the bill and even long into its development, the thought was mostly about property owners living in subdivisions already taking advantage of these options to add another unit or several to their housing, to their existing lots with their existing home. The developer that was initially the focus was property owners who were not production developers, and the prospect has definitely caught on, and production developers certainly are doing it, but so are property owners, just like you or me. And we do see production builders coming in and doing a standard land division, just the usual subdivision, to get a number of standard sized new lots. And then middle housing applications are tied to a lot or parcel. They're not like a consolidation of a number of different lots like we often see with standard subdivisions. So once these production developers do a standard land division, then they'll come back in, and on some or all of the lots, they might propose a middle housing duplex or a middle housing triplex. And then they may even come back in and do a middle housing land division to put those on their own lots. So far,
And that's what we're seeing up on Deer Ridge.
yeah, so
Yeah.
yes, and that's so far we're seeing kind of a mix of single detached housing with duplexes in most cases for that approach. Other developments like this one on the screen now, you know, that's a property owner who just wanted to add 2 units to their lot. They're not proposing to divide it, and we're seeing interest from people who want extended family situations, people who just want income to be able to pay their own mortgages, besides the production developers. And there are a lot of questions and people with curiosity, but I think it's going to be a bit longer before we see more private property owners coming in and doing this.
I wonder if you've encountered issues with HOAs. I can imagine in my little subdivision where I live, the HOA screaming bloody murder if one of our homeowners decided to add an ADU or something behind their house. I know that, I mean, it's not the county's business to deal with HOAs, but I wonder if that's been an issue.
Well,
because there are covenants against this kind of thing in a lot of HOAs.
Yeah, so the ones that were in place before the state passed these requirements, those stand. This doesn't override those CC&Rs, but it does void anything created after the adoption.
Oh, interesting.
After they adopted or passed these requirements. There is a lot of familiarizing, I think, that needs to happen because ADUs are not a new concept. You know, they're not middle housing under the rule, but they're a great resource to help supply needed housing and for extended family and for young adults and people who want to stay on their properties but don't need their giant house anymore. So I think we need to normalize these housing types a bit so that hopefully some homeowners associations will reconsider if they do have restrictions.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. I'd appreciate if you could share your presentation with me, send it as a PDF or something via email.
Sure.
Because I'll follow up with something in the Cedar Mill News in our July issue.
Great.
This was very, very informative. Last call for questions. Anyone? Okay. Well, community partners, we are ready for you. I only believe that we have someone from Tualatin and Valley Water and somebody from Washington County Sheriff. Megan, since you were the first one to pop in here, why don't you go ahead and take it away? Anne, if you can unshare your screen. Anne? Hello? She seems to be frozen. Stop sharing. There we go. No? Hello? There we go. Okay. Megan, take it away. Thank you. And Elliot, welcome.
So I just have a few quick updates and then I will pass it over to Deputy Hart. So we just released our 2023 annual report. You can find that on our website if you are interested in reading that. It has a lot of updates on general things that happened in 2023, different cases and focuses that you know what we are up to at the sheriff's office. And then we also just released our summer safety guide. So if you have any questions about leaving kids at home, window safety, temperature safety, all of those different things, those are in our summer safety guide. You could take a look at that on our website as well. And then last but not least, National Night Out signups are open. So if you are interested in throwing a National Night Out celebration and want to invite the sheriff's office to join, we have the registration open, so you can let us know who you'd like to invite, and we can try and schedule some of our staff to come and celebrate with you. This year it is on August 6th. I know there are a few celebrations happening around that, so if that date doesn't work, then you could still register for a different date. But that's always a fun time for community and law enforcement to connect. So I'll go ahead and share my screen with the calls for service map, and then I'll pass it over to Deputy Hart to discuss that. Are you able to see my screen? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, we can see it.
Hey, so just keep in mind these are calls for service. Not particularly a crime has occurred. It's just someone's reporting a crime is occurring, and then we get there and decide if it actually is a crime. I'll give you a good example. Like, so that's not necessarily a crime. Obviously, it's going to come in like that on the call queue.
Deputy Hart, you cut out there for a minute. Can you explain that again?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, like I said, these are calls for service, not necessarily crimes. If you missed my example with that in particular, like if there's someone at your door and you don't know who it is, you call it in. If you're concerned and it turns out to be your husband who's coming home from work early, that's not a burglary, clearly not a crime, but it may come in that way on the system. For reference, I work the Bethany district, which is everything above Highway 26 on that map. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
We've been people have been noticing lately, there's a little piece of land on Cornell that was originally called the Overlook, and now they're calling it the Crack Nook or something because it's a set of really interesting looking basalt stones, but then there are also some bushes. And this is on Cornell, west of the Shell station and west of, there's a big commercial building there. And it's sort of right in the middle of in between both ends of the downtown. And apparently one of the business owners is cleaning it up on a regular basis. But when I drove by there yesterday, I saw a huge pile of clothes and trash. And I've taken it up with Land Use and Transportation to see if they might be able to prune up the vegetation. It's a tall Oregon grape, and it makes a great place to hide and use it as a restroom. and a place to use drugs and eat your fast food. And it's just not really what we want as a feature of our downtown. So I'm wondering what it's just a new concern that's surfaced. We did a Cornell cleanup as part of the Cedar Mill Community Club, and I found some trash there, but it wasn't horrible. But we've had readers and members of our news group on Facebook mentioning that it's a mess most of the time, unless whoever it is that's cleaning it up has just been there. And I saw the evidence of that, like I said yesterday, driving by. It was obvious, even from the street, that there was a pile of crap. What can the sheriff's office do? I know you can't like park there, but would you recommend pruning up the vegetation?
If I know what you're talking about, it's right after the Shell station, kind of where Barnes Road splits out. No?
No. Well, it's where Old Barnes comes into Cornell.
Sure,
It's
yeah.
west of that.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I guess you could say, catty corner from the pot shop.
Yeah.
There's apartments across the street. It's on the north side of Cornell. Yeah.
So
And it was meant to be a community gathering spot, but it's never really been that, except this is not the type of community we want to gather there.
Sure. So I don't know, as far as recommending anything regarding cutting down vegetation or anything like that. I think it's fairly obvious to say the transient community will go to wherever they find concealment. I particularly haven't responded to that area all that much. Frankly, I can't remember a time I did, but sorry, that's my laptop telling me I need to do something. But as far as like calling the green life there, like you could, but I imagine they just find another place to go. Unfortunately, we can't do a whole lot. Like we could move people off of private property without a problem, but public property, it's a way.
It is public.
Yeah, it's a way in of violating someone's rights and not, right? So we try not to push that. But I understand the concern. I don't know if calling the green space and the bushes and all that will fix that necessarily. I think they just move to another spot.
I wonder if the patrol could be made aware of it and just shine their lights over there whenever they go by to sort of harass people.
Oh, we drive by that, I mean, more times than I can count every day, probably with lights and sirens, because we respond to the target that's nearby, the various apartment buildings nearby. So they're aware of our presence, without a doubt. They're aware of our presence. It's just they know that technically speaking, we can't move them, and they don't much care. Like we could talk to them and try to move them along. Realistically speaking, unless we have a criminal element or a violation level element, there's nothing for like we can't enforce anything that's not a crime or a violation.
What if they're actively using drugs?
Sure, then we'd contact them, but we need to see that firsthand, right? Like if we drive by and we're not on a priority call, otherwise we see someone shooting up or
I think we lost you.
them and talk to them, ID them, and go forth. But again, we need to be able to see that.
Right, and what are the odds?
Yeah, it has to be more than just someone kind of hanging out near a bush, which they generally do. We actually have to see them injecting something, using a pill, anything like that. That gives us reasonable suspicion of a crime.
Okay, well, we'll see what LUT comes up with.
Sure. Yeah.
It was all part of the big Cornell, quote unquote, Cornell improvement project. And maybe a little bit aspirational in terms of the way it would get used. Does anybody else have questions for our law enforcement agency here? Now is the time. I see a lot of red dots. We have been made aware that there's an awful lot of shoplifting at Target. During that same Cornell cleanup, I found a small bundle of gift cards under a bush outside the Target store. And I'm sure that's a fairly regular occurrence. I think whoever stole them couldn't figure out how to get any money out of them and just left them there.
Yeah, we respond to Target quite often. For some reason, it's specifically Target versus any other like retail store. But if you don't mind, I will touch up on something that was brought to my attention this week. I'm guessing a lot of people here live in the Bethany area, right? So when you've seen a lot of stolen vehicle
You keep freezing up. There you go.
You're back.
Your video and audio freeze every once in a while.
That's my bad.
You're back.
So regarding vehicle thefts, right? For those who are parking their vehicles, whether it be outside, like specifically not in a enclosed garage, whether it's on the street or in front of your home, a trend I've been seeing that doesn't make sense to me is people leaving their vehicles unlocked, and on top of that, leaving a spare key in that vehicle. We're trying to do anything we can to locate people who steal like vehicles, unlawful uses of vehicle, and all that. But to kind of protect ourselves from this, I mention this only because I've seen quite a lot of it. No matter how safe your neighborhood is, like people will come in from wherever, whether it be Portland, anywhere else. They're just going to try door handles, see what's open. If there's a vehicle that's open, they're going to try to hotwire it, whatever the case may be. And then I've also seen people not only leaving it unlocked, but then a spare key inside the vehicle. It's just offering it up to them at that point. Just because the neighborhood is a really nice neighborhood and it's safe doesn't mean that people won't come from Portland, wherever else, and try door handles, right? So just kind of an announcement, like, please do not leave your vehicles unlocked if they're not in an enclosed garage. If they're on the street, inside of your home, lock it, take the key out, bring it in home. That would probably solve at least half of the stolen vehicle cases I've seen in the last month or two.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? No. Okay, well, thank you very much for the update, and I'm glad you were able to join us.
Yeah.
Lindsay?
One last quick update.
Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. One last quick update for me. If you have any questions for us, I will be going out on leave. So the new liaison while I am out is going to be Tabitha Elker, and she will be available if you guys need anything. So feel free to email her. And if you email me, that's totally fine. You'll get my auto reply, which will have her email in there.
I think I left her email on my general notice for our meeting, so
yes,
that'll
she
work.
still gets them. Yep.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Now, Lindsay, we're ready for you.
Can you all hear me okay, Virginia?
We can hear you. We can see you. Thank you for joining us.
I will be quick. So good evening, everyone. My name is...
We're not in a hurry.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit slower. My name is Lindsay Wachnick, and I am with Tualatin Valley Water District, who is the water provider for this area, along with some other areas in Washington County. Just a couple of water infrastructure updates to provide. The first is about an upcoming main replacement project we're doing on Northwest West Lawn Terrace, and we've talked a little bit about this before. Right. We're going to be replacing about 460 feet of existing water main. This project is in the queue, expected to begin in late fall and last for 2 or 3 months. But again, it is in the queue. It has 3 other projects, water main replacement projects before it. One's happening right now on Northwest Meadowgrass. And then there's one in Aloha and then another one in Beaverton. And then we'll move to West Lawn. So it's coming up. We're getting there. And then
because, I'm sorry, is this because it's an older subdivision and it's just time to update the water lines?
Exactly. And they go through a process, our engineers, of ranking some of the different areas, how many times they've had main breaks or leaks and that kind of thing. So we're just checking them off.
I remember some in Terra Linda for sure.
Yeah.
And will that mean that the street will be closed? How's that going to work?
So typically when we're doing the water main replacement projects, we allow local access. So we'll have to get out there and talk to the neighbors and make sure they're aware they can still get their deliveries. And we just have to be very quick, get in there, do the job, and get out of there. The lucky thing is that it's only 460 feet, which will go pretty quick. So it won't be too much of a disturbance, knock on wood, knocking on wood there. Right. So we talked a little bit about Barnes Road. Barnes Road is popular. Today, we're going to talk just real quickly about a project we're going to start in late June on Barnes Road. We have a pump station and a reservoir near Viewmont Drive. It's, I think, Council Crest. I may be, or Catlin Crest. I may be saying that incorrectly.
Oh, okay.
But we are starting a project to tunnel under Barnes Road. And a lot of utility agencies use this type of excavation where they go under a road and then they push their water main through. So it's less disruptive. It's pretty cool. And we're going to start that again in late June. After that, water main is installed underneath Barnes Road. We're going to start replacing some water main on Viewmont Drive, just up the hill just a bit. And then we'll finish that project by connecting Viewmont Drive water main with the water main we pushed under Barnes Road. So it's multiple steps. We're starting again with the tunneling under, and some of the businesses in the area might feel a little bit of vibration and hear noise. I've gone out and talked to them and given them information. So we will keep anybody affected by that project up to date. And again, that project's set to begin in late June and conclude before this winter. So we're on track to get those two projects started. And that's what I have.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. Well, I think that brings our community partners to an end, and I will share some stuff that I have. We are currently not able to share anything in a chat box, so I can't give you the link to last month's YouTube recording for the May meeting or for the June CPO news, but if you go to YouTube and search for CPO1, you will find it. There's apparently only one CPO1 on YouTube, which is helpful. And to get to the CPO news in Cedar Mill News, you just go to cedarmillnews.com and scroll down the homepage until you find CPO news. And there was a fair amount of development news, as well as information about this meeting and information about CPO7's meeting. And that brings me to my next topic, which was the CPO7 June meeting. We are publicizing their meetings a little more and sharing that information in CPO1 news in the Cedar Mill News, because we have a lot of readers in the Bethany area. CPO7 is Bethany and Rock Creek. And so we finally realized that we should be sharing their information along with the CPO1 meeting. Their meeting in June, which was last night, was on ride connection and a proposed Bethany shuttle. TriMet continues to try to figure out how to serve this quadrant of Washington County, which poses big challenges in terms of hilly, non-grid streets, and a population that tends to want to stay in their cars rather than riding public transit. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a decent population of folks who could really use help getting around. And PCC is one destination that is way underserved and has a population of folks who would definitely benefit from more public transit. So TriMet is working with Ride Connection and some kind of a shuttle. I missed the meeting. I'm waiting for them to post it on their Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CPO7WashCo. And that's, I'm not sure if you need to worry about capitalization on Facebook, but it's capital W Wash, capital C Co. So CPO7WashCo, all one phrase, no punctuation. And they will be posting their meeting on that page when they get it processed, I guess. I am very interested to see. I had one quick comment from Mary Manso, who is the past chair of CPO7, that the shuttle is now looking like it's going to go from the Sunset Transit Center and along Science Park Drive and then up to PCC, which is new and interesting. I don't know exactly what that route's going to be, but I'm definitely going to watch their meeting, and I invite everyone to, if you're interested in the future of public transit in our region. Development updates. I am going to share my screen for a moment. We're all sort of looking forward to this big detour this summer. Closure 1 is going to be over here. What they're doing is connecting Thompson so that instead of making two 90-degree turns, it will just make a gradual diagonal run this way. But to accomplish that, they're going to be closing this part of the road coming any day now. I believe it might be as early as June 15th. And this is the prescribed detour. It seems a bit too long, but the reason is that they can't make an official detour on streets that are less than the classification of the street they're detouring from. And Thompson is a major road, and so they have to stay on Thompson and come down Bethany Boulevard and back over Cornell and then back up Saltzman. We expect people may design their own detours. Nobody's going to be sitting out there giving out tickets for people who don't use that detour route, but that's the official route. And then closure number 2, we don't understand this. We went to as in me, went to the open house a few nights ago. The contractor originally, at least the county originally, had said that closure 1 would be first and would be accomplished and over with before school let out, or before school comes back in the fall. But for some reason, they decided once the contractor got in place and got their hands on the plans, they decided that they needed to close this segment first and then close this. And I was told by an LUT person that it would probably be after school is in. So I'm sure they'll make some allowances for the parents to get their kids to school, but we don't know what that will be yet. So that's the big Kenny Thompson detour. I stop the share. Oh. Did you all see that? Was I sharing? Yeah, okay. Okay, let me get to the other image that I wanted to share. Okay, the Cedar Hills Apartments, this is the corner of Sunset Highway and 217 coming down this way. And there's the Sunset Transit Center. This was proposed and approved by Beaverton a couple of years ago, and they get 2 years to start to develop something, and they are now proposing another 2-year extension on the project. So they're just not ready to build it yet. This was a conceptual drawing of what it's going to look like. People have been asking about what's going to happen to the DMV and Harbor Freight. Well, they're still going to be there, which is good news for those of us who like to use that DMV office or who like to shop at Harbor Freight. I just got a lovely pressure washer there the other day. And I believe it's June 26th is the deadline for public comments. If anybody is interested in having the CPO make a comment about it, let me know, brb@teamweb.com or cpo1leaders@gmail.com. But I can't think of a really good objection to their having a 2-year extension. They're just not ready to develop yet. It happens, especially with something that big, and it's probably complicated financing and permitting and so on and so forth. That brings me to the end of my updates. And the next item on the agenda is an open mic. It's your CPO. I'll just make the announcement that the Cedar Mill Cider Festival will be happening on Sunday, October 6th this year. We're moving back into the very beginning of October instead of having it in September. It works better for the Park District, and it works better for me with my schedule of getting the news out every month. So Sunday, October 6th, where we get free fresh cider pressed by the Boy Scouts. We have a different band this time. We have a bluegrass and country type duo. I'm still nailing down the food booth, and we'll have a big double history tent with all Cedar Mill history information, all the regular good stuff with booths, with vendors and information booths. So put that on your calendar. Anyone else have any community announcements for the good of the order? An event you have coming up? Fran, do you have anything that you want to let people know about tree keepers? You're still able to talk.
I can't think of anything. Mary Lou, do you have anything that we need to? I should say that there's a significant number of us from Tree Keepers that are looking at the proposed significant natural resource Goal 5 policy. And we've been reviewing it with the CCI Significant Natural Resource Subcommittee. It's a lot of very intense work that we're putting into that. And if there's anyone who has any comments about or concerns about what's happening with the protection of our significant natural resources, feel free to email me. You can send them my email address, Virginia, it's okay. Because the more eyes that look at it, the better off we are.
Yeah, if you want to get hold of Fran, since we can't post email addresses in the non-existent chat, you can email me at cpo1leaders@gmail.com, and I will put you in touch with Fran. I'd be happy to. I think there are some tree keeper activities listed in the paper in the June issue of Cedar Mill News at cedarmillnews.com under the Nature and Garden collection of stories.
We do have a lovely gathering where we just sit under the trees and chat about how we feel about trees and stuff. So people are welcome to that, and that's, I believe, is in the Cedar Mill News. So thank you.
Great. Oh, one thing that I haven't mentioned that is like got everybody running around waving their arms in the air is, of course, that all the trees are being cut down on Cornell. And the situation was that the county, back when the Cornell project was initiated back in, I don't know, 2000, right around when I started being involved around here, around 2003, 2004, as Cornell was widened and reconfigured, they put in sidewalks and street trees and these lovely cast iron decorative tree well covers. And the kinds of trees that they planted decided to grow big, bulky, thick roots, which began to upend the sidewalk panels, the concrete panels in the sidewalk. And I wasn't paying attention. I was down there walking around looking at something completely different and nearly fell flat on my face because there was about a 3 or 4 inch gap between the two blocks of sidewalk. And other people had noticed it, of course, but we called it to the attention of LUT, and the only solution that they could come up with was to cut down all the trees, tear up all the sidewalks, and start over again with a different type of tree that doesn't develop thick roots. I know Mary Lou was concerned, and plenty of other people are extremely concerned about the loss of tree canopy and shade. But I've got to say, I can't think of another way. If they tried to trim the roots, it would have killed the trees anyway. They can't raise the sidewalk because it would affect all the businesses along Cornell. They were kind of boxed in as far as the decision that they had to make. And I know it doesn't please a lot of people, but the county now has a completely different list of trees that are acceptable for street trees. Hopefully they will choose well this time so that they can, and I'm sure if you've driven down Cornell, you've seen them tearing up the sidewalk. It'll disrupt things this summer, but this is the kind of work they have to do in the summer. When they've finished with all of that, they will replant trees along there. They're not going to use grates. They're just going to use wood chips to cover the tree roots. So that may help somewhat in not causing such a disruption. That's what I know. So with that, I believe we could all say good night. Unless anyone has any last minute thoughts that they want to share.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Pardon?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay. I'm sure somebody will second it for us. And with that, we will see you next month. We have a person from the sheriff's office with traffic and speeding, and that's going to be the focus of next month's program. We may add something else to it, but I know that we're going to have that, and that people are continually talking about speeding on Saltzman, speeding on Barnes, on parts of Cornell, and we know it happens, and this program's going to talk about how to report it, what to do about it, and what the sheriff's office is trying to do about it. So that's something that will hit home. Good night, everyone.